We are only speaking the actual fact. We are only speaking the actual facts. We are only speaking the actual facts. Speaking the actual facts, the actual facts.
With Dr. Deuce, what y'all?
We are only speaking the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts.
With Dr. Deuce, what y'all?
We are only speaking the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts.
With Dr. Deuce, what y'all?
In molecular anthropology, the field uses genetic data. Genealogical studies, which is include, I went through this, right? Okay, so now let's deal with genealogical studies and how they study the genes. This is just brief for you to understand how they acknowledge scientists and how you can confirm that the Father, what he teaches is all wise, right, and exact, 100%, irrefutable, indisputable, intransgressible, right? Information that's coming from beyond that stars, the heavens, down to us, to his children. And I'll give you some authorities from their school, because a lot of people say, well, I don't find it in this reference. They need the confirmation from the Caucasoid, which is fine. That's who taught you. It's not a problem. He confirms our doctrine as well, so we won't have any issues. Now, there's a multi-regional evolution. Okay, in genetic studies beginning in the 1980s, provide explicit support for a recent origin of modern humans in Africa 200,000 years ago. This is one of the consensus across the board. They acknowledge that there's an out of Africa migration that took place. They just don't know exactly at what point and what time frame, because they're getting it from paleogenomics and molecular anthropology. That's all they can compile. They're not getting it from the source, which we are getting it from the source. And you can find that study, complete book, in the Mitochondrial DNA, Human Evolution, in an article called called Nature in 1987. They started printing this information, right? Also, the evolution and origins of modern man still is a current book. It's current. It's the latest, one of the latest, even though it's a few years old. It's the latest insofar as, not the latest. Let me say this: it's the earliest, but still the most factually verifiable. Meaning, no other books or authors have come back to debunk this particular writing by Distel T.R. T.R. Distel T.R. Distel. That's the author. Now, in this article, the recent African genesis of humans, genetic studies reveal that African women of 200,000 years ago was our common ancestor. That's in an article by this same person, the recent African genesis of humans. And the main points of this article, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the main points of this article, what they said is that paleontologists had argued that evolution, or the evolutionary split, happened between humans and great apes 2.5 million years ago. Now, we'll get into that because they're speaking about a specific gene pool. Now, we understand that there were beings who did intervene, right, from the Sirius star system as well as the Pleiadian star system, right? We'll get into that, the biblical texts or the records that speak about these beings coming down, the sons of God coming down to the planet, right? Also, there's a breeding process where these group of Canaanites were bred for and a disease was placed in their blood called the disease of leprosy, or leproma, Hansen's disease. That was a specific breeding. Then you had a breeding of the Adamite, which is the Genesis breeding that happened 450,000 years ago. That's a specific breeding. So there's several breedings of the Caucasoid and his line. The latest breeding was the Adamites. That's the Genesis story. These beings, Adam or Edom, which is the red ruddy race. This is the wicked race spoken of in Genesis chapter 6, verse 6 and 5, where their Lord repented for breeding this particular being, right? That was 6,000 years ago. But obviously, they're trying to find out how Africans, how we were here prior to that. and how our genetics mixed in with a certain stocks of the Caucasoid, which you'll find out that our blood was used in the breeding process as well from these Sands and the Sands people of Botswana. But this article speaks about this revelation that we all stem from an African woman 200,000 years ago. Now, geneticists argue against it, claims that the similarities were too similar to be more than a few million years ago. So they basically were trying to understand how is it that one group, one stock looks like it came older and then another stock looks lesser. That's because of the extraterrestrial intervention and the millions of years by which these beings were coming back and forth on the planet. They don't have those records of what you'll call angels, Elohim, whatever name you use, depending on the language. Muslims, Christians, and Jews get caught up with this. Oh, they're Malaikat, or they're Elohim, or they're angels, little fat white babies with wings, right? The whole wing thing comes from the seraphim and the cherubim, which is coming from Mesopotamia. Father Abraham coming from Ur of Chaldees. So they got it from the same concept. The problem is they're not sure at what timeline these extraterrestrials, angels, beings from the heavens, the stars, intervened and placed their genetics to upgrade this man. So this is a lot of times when you read these articles where they question the timeline, it's because they're not aware of that intervention. So now, today, this was old. The main point of the older this article, where they were arguing now with this new genome. Let me turn this fan off, please. Now with this new, please share the room. Keep sharing, right? Because this is going to go really viral, and then this podcast is going to blow up because this doctrine is profound, and the world needs to hear what the Father says to his children, right? So when you so this new paleontologists today say now modern humans evolved from the archaic forebears around the world over the past million years, right? Geneticists are using maternal lines of descent to a woman who lived 200,000 years ago in Africa. Modern humans arose in one place and spread elsewhere. That's on page 68 of that particular article. The article is the recent African genesis of humans. Genetic study, or in that on page 68, you'll see throughout this article, you'll see that. I'm just making reference to one article here. Now, the question comes up: why does genetic information of living subjects, you all, people who are alive, like the modern day population, like one of the brothers, Sechem Kathmos, right, had his DNA done. Many people use these DNA companies that track your DNA and give you your mitochondria DNA, your maternal lineage. So, because living genes must have ancestors, whereas dead fossils may not have descendants. So they need your genetics, right, to confirm the descendants of the fossils. And then they can make the comparison. That's the only way you can create a phylogenetic tree. You have to have living descendants. Otherwise, if you don't have living descendants, you can't determine where the genes are today. Therefore, you can't mark them or give them a time record. So, therefore, molecular biologists, which right, know that genes they examine must have been passed down through lineages that survive to the present. Paleontologists cannot be sure that the fossils they are examining does not lead down to an evolutionary blind alley. That's why they need you. So all of these studies are needed to create a complete chart. I hope you follow me. Let me know you're following and understanding what I'm saying. Just type in yes in the chat, and I hope you're sharing this. Right? Okay. So what are we getting at? We're getting at the two approaches when it comes to this study. You have the molecular approach, and then you have the paleographical approach. The paleographical approach is the study is considered, right? They consider this spotty. Why? Because a handful of surviving bones may not represent the majority of organisms. So basically, right, when you have a group of limited fossils it's difficult to say, well, this fossil represents this particular population. So it's spotty in that way. The molecular approach is free from limitation that paleontologists have. Why? Paleontologists have the issue of just bones, fossils, right? But molecular approach is that they can compare the fossils and bones to the living DNA and have a more complete story. This is how they can track you through your test, because the molecular approach is that we have your molecular genes, your structure, your biological makeup, your entire genetic sequence from all of your bloodlines, right? And with that, we can determine everything about you.
We are only speaking the actual
Thanks for
facts.
joining the Actual Facts Podcast. If you enjoy these lectures, please feel free to check out previously recorded episodes. Just click the link in the window, and please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like.
With Dr. Deuce Roy, y'all.
We are only speaking the actual facts.